Councillor Gary Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint Councillor Schimmel and Councillor Barber with regard to their amendment. However, I think we can sort this issue out. The basic idea of their amendment is a sound one, that scrutiny should oversee the monitoring reports from the council plan. I think that's absolutely fine. The problem is we don't need this amendment in order to do that. We simply need to ask for the monitoring reports to come to scrutiny, which is something that I think that we should do. However, if Council Assembly simply mandates overview of scrutiny to take this issue 4 times a year, we're going to come up against the boringly practical issue of overpacking our agendas, which is something that Councillor Sandwell has quite rightly raised at scrutiny meetings in the past, which is we need to have enough time to properly consider the issues that do come before us. I think scrutiny should look at these issues. I think maybe we need to take a look at how many times it comes to us per year, maybe twice a year, and then we look at how maybe the subcommittees could take some aspects of those monitoring reports for their committees as well. So what I'd suggest is that we discuss this at the next overview of scrutiny committee meeting. I'm going to be voting against this amendment tonight, but I'm sure that we can get a satisfactory conclusion on this issue following this meeting.
Councillor David Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to pick up on a few points. Obviously, the council leader, I think, has made it very clear what weight he puts on the council plan that's come before us today. And I'm going to really restrict my comments to the area of the healthy, active lives and around public health and health inequalities. I'm going to hear what Councillor John says in relation to how it is mainstream in this document, but I have to say that, while I accept that reducing, trying to address housing issues, trying to improve our paths, etc., will have an impact, possibly on public health outcomes, it will not do so in its own. And this is a very important new responsibility of public health that the council has, and we have a unique opportunity, I would say, as the council, to make a real difference to people's public health outcomes. But the problem is that that is not, I don't think, sufficiently reflected in this document. There is no statement, for example, about how we want to reduce the health inequalities in regards to life expectancy that exist in this borough. So we have a difference in life expectancy of up to 10 years for men and up to 8 years for women. Now, I find it sort of amazing that it's not in there. There is not a statement in the council plan, this important document, that states that that is an issue for us as a council. In regards to things like sexual health, drugs and alcohol, yes, of course they would be in the health and wellbeing plan and responsibility of the board, but they won't be addressed, unfortunately, just by dealing with our housing issues, dealing with our parks. We need to make absolutely clear that we want to step change in the way that the council deals with public health if we are truly to make a difference. The government has given an opportunity and shown that they're prepared to support mainstreaming health and bring it over to the responsibility of local authorities, as we've seen in Manchester. But local authorities, if we are to actually win that argument that we should have responsibility for health money, then we have to, I think, demonstrate what a difference we can make on public health. And my worry is that we just have not put that priority and weight into this council plan document. There are lots of gaps. If you actually look at the targets and the commitments that have been made, there are lots of gaps. It doesn't say what we will achieve in 2015, 2016, 2017. And in regards to Councillor Don's question about free swimming and gym, we are not saying that we're against free swimming and gym. We recognise that is one of your council commitments. We recognise that you need to deliver that. The point we were making, I was making at the last full council, was that we shouldn't use public health money, which should be evidence-based, unless we can absolutely demonstrate that through that free swimming and gym pledge, you are putting the people who are inactive or the people who have obesity problems or issues around weight actually into the gym to swim. It must be evidence-led. That's the point we're making, and I hope the council will consider the role of public health. Thank you.
Councillor Michael Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The leader has put his case for his council plan. He won a clear mandate in last May's elections and has therefore earned, unless his group choose to throw him out, the 4 years to implement his vision of fairness and equality. However, I get into politics as I know councillors all across the chamber do, to help the least fortunate in our community. And I'm sure many of those who consider themselves as progressives will reflect from time to time how that burning desire to help the poorest has led them, particularly at a time of tight financial public finances, to support millions of pounds of discretionary spending, providing free school meals to children from richer families. Similarly, we shall watch with interest to see who in practice takes up the offer of free gym and swim lessons. Is that really going to help families who are working extra shifts in low-paid work and don't have the time of the day to enjoy leisure activities? Let's now turn to some of the 10 fairer future promises, most of which I hasten to add are wholly laudable. The school pledged to ensure that 70% of students at every secondary school get at least 5 good GCSEs took my interest. How is the council going to ensure, given that every secondary school has opted out of Southwark control, by being voluntary aided, becoming an academy or joining an independent chain? I turn for enlightenment to the detail on page 26 and find that the plan is to support schools. I fear this promise is actually an attempt by the council to take credit for the magnificent work already going on in such splendid schools as the Charter, which serves my local community. I now turn to Healthy Active Lives, where on page 34 we find what appears to be an empty promise, and certainly a missed target. We have Declaration of Southwark as a 20-mile-an-hour borough, and a target date of December 2014. Declaring something doesn't actually mean it happens. There has been a marked reluctance on the part of the council to say how and when this will actually come into force. And under a strong local economy, we find the number one pledge on page 18 is to keep the council tax at or below inflation. Well, with deflation now a realistic prospect for the British economy, I welcome the Labour administration fulfilling that promise. Yet again, the Conservative group is ahead of the curve on this one. We are proposing a 2% reduction this year, so I look forward to you supporting our amendment. Sadly, for all the warm words, this plan is a missed opportunity. A truly radical council would do as my council colleagues in Lambeth have proposed, and look to make serious back office savings through merging a range of functions with other funds. The Director of Finance in Lambeth has agreed to deliver a 10 million savings. Why should something not be the same?
Thank you very much. Can you sit down?
With savings like that,
Can you sit down? Sir? Can you wait a seat? Councillor Ben Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I applaud the council on its vision. The vision is bold. I question the delivery. There is a great plan. There is a great plan for tens of thousands of new homes. The plan for this year is slightly more modest, 71 new homes. You've got to start somewhere. I support the council on some of its goals in the council plan, but again I question the delivery. The plan says you will not know whether you're visiting homes in council, housing association or private developments, but that's unless you want to use the shared garden, where only leaseholds have the key. I agree with the council's plan that all residents should be able to access the benefits of regeneration. My residents can't even access the gym, which is built in the shared ownership block, and they're forbidden from accessing with a sign saying leaseholders only. The council runs the risk, as my gran would say, of being all mouth and no trousers. The segregation of facilities is the new corridors. Residents walking around Southwark shouldn't know if it's a council block or a private development. But this includes equal rights for shared facilities. And it's a real shame that this is lacking in this plan. And I really urge the relevant councillors, Williams and Livingston, to look again at this, because the fact is that some of the council homes will be built by developers, private developers. Some of them will be funded by luxury flats. And those in social housing shouldn't feel like second-class citizens on their own estate. So I really urge the council to look again at this make sure this is part of their plan so we can all live in a mixed and diverse community.
Councillor Nick Dollars.
Listening to contributions from Ben, Michael and David, felt like I was in the Labour group, talking about looking after the most vulnerable, ensuring that we built social housing. Far be it from me to remind you, Ben, that in the 8 years you were in power, you built one. We built 70 more in the period you've been in power. So, in how many years? Right? Yes. Be careful what you say. And think about the shared ownership. The private residents have their private communal space, and the social housing have their own private rented. They just don't share with others, which improves security. And I have found out the social, no, it wasn't actually, and the social housing element had 3 times the amount of space that the private ones do. So the rich folk get less space. Anyway, it's the brass, oh God, I've got my own words here, brass neck and barefaced hypocrisy. It really is. We're talking about sort of the health numbers. It is, I believe, the coalition government that has been cutting the health opportunities for all of us across the board. And I think it is Labour local authorities that are trying to make the best of a bad job in ensuring that people's health outcomes are good and better than they were. I am one of those people, and it might not be this figure of a man, you might not believe it, but I do actually use a gym on a regular basis, and I go swimming regularly. And as some of you know, I had a major operation not so long ago, and it was just as a consequence of actually using the gym and swimming for about 2 years beforehand, that the speed of my recovery was greatly advanced as a consequence. But I really don't want to hear a word about health outcomes and people using gyms. People use gyms. I am not the only person who is recovering from major surgery, illness, that are currently using the gyms that I use. There are people who are using it because they have broken their back, they're swimming, it's the only way they can do it. There are people who are doing it to reduce weight, to improve their health outcomes. There are people with few referred there by GPs. A friend of mine, a gym buddy as I now have, and a swim buddy, they're quite different, one's wet and the other one's not, is a guy who's just had his heart done, 3 months in, and he's referring himself to the gym. And that's before we do it, so people are referring themselves to it. And if the opportunity is there, we should be celebrating it rather than criticising it. I rest my case.
In accordance with the program motion, we have heard 6 speakers. I now call Councillor Peter John to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the 6 speakers. And just a couple of points to pick up. Clearly, Councillor Edwards really responded to this amendment. There's never been anything stopping us reviewing the performance of the council, but suggested it should be asking that the Cabinet shouldn't look at how it's doing in the course of the year. It just sounds to me like complete insanity that we should operate and not review ourselves and hold ourselves to account for how we're performing would be a completely missed opportunity. Just on Councillor Note's points, I mean, I can't emphasise enough how wrong I think he is actually in terms of his very narrow definition of how we look at public health. I think he's stuck in a time when public health was separate from the council. It's not us, it's him. And his insistence that everything that we do with public health money must be evidence-based. Again, I couldn't disagree more, because how do you ever get the evidence in order to promote programmes? That would only ever do things that you've always ever done. And that road, I think, leads to nowhere. And certainly doesn't lead to innovation, which is what we need to see, and that's what free swims and gyms are. And for instance, I mean, it's all about health outcomes, which Councillor Dolezal's been talking about.
we spend more on sexual health than most other boroughs in London, maybe probably the country, but our sexual health outcomes are worse than any other borough. So it doesn't equate that we just do evidence-based things and carry on doing exactly the same things and never change if you're not getting improved outcomes. This administration is about using public health to improve health outcomes for all our residents. And I just referred him, he said it's not mentioned, but we will work across the council to reduce health inequalities and improve people's lives. It's there. It's a clear statement in the council plan. Councillor Mitchell, saying we should all be Tories. I couldn't, again, disagree even more with him. But on schools, yes, I make no apology. We all, as local councillors, should be champions, not just for our schools, but for our local residents, and we should be holding schools to account. I think we've got to get our heads around the new role that we have in education as local councillors of holding schools to account. And when they are failing, we shouldn't be afraid to tell them. When they are succeeding, we should applaud and tell them, carry on your work of improvement. And I think that's really the position that we have as a council. I think this is an ambitious plan, Mr. Mayor. It really does set out clearly our bold objectives for the future. It's a plan which has not just the endorsement of this Labour Group, it has the endorsement of the people who voted for the Labour Party on May the 22nd last year. So again, I commend it to Council Assembly.
We shall now vote on Amendment A. Those in favour of Amendment A? Those against? Abstentions? Amendment is lost. I shall now move to the vote on substantive motion. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Carried. I will ask the clerk to come in at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In accordance with the Budget and Policy Framework Procedure Rule 2E, the decision can be implemented with immediate effect. Thank you.
Policy and Resources Strategy 2015-16 to 2017-2018 Revenue Budget. There are 7 questions on the report as set out on lilac paper circulated this evening. I will ask each member who has submitted a question if they wish to ask a supplementary. Members should ensure that their supplementary questions are genuine questions and not speeches. Supplementary question must arise directly out of the original question or the reply. Councillor Neil Coyle, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council has been lobbying the government for a fairer funding settlement for Southwark, which is the 3rd worst hit local authority in the country this year, despite being the 25th most deprived area. What response have you had from MPs in Southwark to the Council's campaign for a fairer funding for our borough, particularly local Lib Dem MP and Government Minister Simon Hughes?
I'd like to thank Councillor Coyle for his supplemental question. He's quite right. The Leader and myself went to meet with the local government minister, Chris Hopkins, and also wrote to our 3 local MPs asking them to join us in lobbying against the terrible unfair funding cuts that Southwark Council has suffered once more this year. Now, both Harriet Harman and Tessa Jowl replied to me very promptly, confirming that they would support us in that lobbying. They wrote to the Minister, and they joined us in that fight. It was sometime I was beginning to wonder if I would in fact get a response from Simon Hughes, and I did finally, just on the 9th of February this month. And I have to say, though, I was really quite shocked with it, because at first I thought actually it come from Eric Pickles. Such was its vehemence. The key statement, I believe, though, is for him to say, I do not believe that Southwark Council has been disproportionately impacted by changes to local government finances. I simply could not believe it. How our local MP, one of our local MPs, can believe that us receiving the third highest cut in the country to our spending power can be fair and just, I do not know. We need an MP who is going to stand up for our area and not let them down in this way, and on May 7th they will have that chance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for her answer. In their budget amendments, both the Lib Dems and the Tories suggest we should cut our contingency to pay for their government's cuts. Does the Cabinet member think that this is wise?
Unsurprised to hear, Councillor Dale, that I do not think it is wise to cut contingencies. The reality is that we have a very difficult challenge ahead of us over the next year to deliver £30 million of savings. Our contingency budgets over the previous years have been a great help to us, both to cushion us in case we are unable to deliver those savings, which fortunately we have been able to, but then to feed in to the following year to make a contribution towards the following year's revenue budgets. Whilst we're setting a one-year budget tonight, we have to think of the future, we have to think of the financial soundness of this council. And it's not just contingencies that is irresponsible in the amendments tonight. We're seeing unrealistic council tax collection levels, a council tax cut, really not a wise move in the current climate. And indeed, the local MP further in his letter suggested that we simply raid the reserves to cover the funding cuts from government. Well, if we followed his advice from 2010, we'd be bankrupt by now. I think what is shown by the amendments tonight is that the Liberal Democrats and Conservatives are willing to be very responsible in their budget amendments in order to get a few cheap headlines, and it's a good thing they're not running this council.
Councillor Anu El-Samra.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet member for her answer. We talked at the last council meeting about council tax collection rates and how the council's made progress on in-year collection, but that's been balanced out really by a lack of progress or going backwards on collecting historic arrears. So I just wondered if the Cabinet member could tell me what she's doing to make sure we do collect historic council tax arrears.
I'm afraid I can't accept the premise of the Leader of the Opposition's question to say we're going backwards on collecting for past years. The fact of the matter is that we are improving the in-year collection, we are cleansing the system of uncollectible debt, which is much, in many cases, inherited from Liberata, for instance. But as we manage that, and as we drive down that historic debt, there's less old debt to collect. So yes, we're not collecting quite as much as in previous years, but that's because there's not so much to collect.
Councillor Lisa Raji.
I thank the Cabinet member for her answer. I'd like to ask, last year recycling levels fell across 18 London boroughs. Isn't it obvious that this will happen in Southwark too, if you're just going to tell people to wrap up their food waste in newspapers or buy their own bags, or wouldn't they just use non-biodegradable carrier bags that would contaminate the waste supply? It seems like you're making recycling harder, not easier, with this very short-sighted cut for a relatively small saving.
No, I'm afraid I can't agree with Councillor Rajan on this point. Southwark has doubled recycling and is doing extraordinarily well to turn things around from the situation we inherited where recycling rate had plateaued very significantly. It was right for us to provide food bags, I believe, when we introduced food waste recycling, but I think now it has embedded that this is a saving we can make. It is very difficult at all times on recycling and on waste to make savings. We always want to do more. It is something we'll be monitoring carefully, but from the work that officers have done, that's laid out in the written answers, to talk to other boroughs about their experiences, we have no reason to believe that no longer providing free food waste bags will result in any reduction in food waste recycling.
Councillor Rosie Shimmer.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for her answer. I wondered whether, perhaps in collaboration with the Cabinet Member for Public Health, she would commit to publishing annual reports on the evidence-based justifications for the way that we're spending the public health ring-fence funding from government. I think this might be particularly important in light of the point that the leader made earlier about the fact that we may be spending some of that money on the new swimming and gym pledge, which, as you point out, is a new initiative, and we will need to build up an evidence-based score.
I'd like to thank Councillor Schimmel for her question. I'm prompted by Councillor Hargrove to note that the Director of Public Health already provides an annual report every year, and I'm sure she will cover in that annual report how the public health money is being spent.
Also, Elisa Mon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, the Cabinet Member, for her answer. I have a supplementary question. Why is the administration failing to get a grip the ongoing IT issues for staff and councillors when it affects their morale and our morale and productivity so badly? And are all these costs being met by the contractor?
I'd like to thank Liza Mann for her question. I agree that IT is a significant issue for us to continue to work on. I think the situation is very much improved. I'm very much more concerned about our staff's morale than I am about members in this case, because I think it's a lot more important that our staff are able to do their job. As I say, it is much improved. We are on an ongoing process to improve IT. It will take time, and we'll be continuing to work very hard on that.
Councillor James Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your answer. I have two supplementary parts. When do you expect to reach this cap of 25 council sites, when it appears that only one site currently has EV cells? And will you consider supporting the Cannock Chase model of installing self-funded photovoltaic cells on council properties where they're planning to give free electricity, eliminating part of the fuel poverty they have in that council area?
I'd like to thank Councillor Barber for his question. As you will see from the answer, we've done a significant amount of work looking at a very practical level at the feasibility of putting cells on as many sites as we can. We'll continue to promote that work. I can't tell you tonight, and I'm happy to write to you about when we might get to 25. Non-mechanic chase model, I'm happy to work with Councillor Merrill to look at that. I'm not familiar with it myself.
Thank you. The Cabinet Member for Finance, Strategy and Performance will present the report. Councillor Fiona Colley, you have 10 minutes in which to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I stand here tonight to present our budget as we move into the 5th year of the worst government cuts ever applied to local government. Where Southwark, one of the most deprived boroughs in the country, has consistently been one of the hardest hit. This year, our borough faces the 3rd highest cuts per household in the country, £155 for every home. Since 2010, the government has reduced our spending power by almost £700 for every home in this borough. And it's a similar picture in Hackney, in Knowsley, in Newham, in Town Hamlets, and yet, strangely enough, not in Surrey, not in Wokingham, not in Richmond, not in Kingston upon Thames. No, Mr. Mayor. The startling truth is that many of the wealthiest parts of the country are actually seeing an increase in spending power this year. Mr Mayor, the scale and distribution of cuts to local government are disproportionately large and deeply unfair, with the poorest parts of the country hit the hardest. And I find it shocking that rather than standing alongside us and lobbying for our borough, one of our local MPs instead toes Eric Pickle's line and claims that these cuts are fair. Mr Mayor, Simon Hughes has once again let down the people of this borough, and I'm only glad that in just a few weeks' time, residents will have the chance to elect Neil Coyle and an MP who will put them first. Since 2010, we've had to make 156 million of savings to balance our budgets, and tonight we must find 30 million more. And while I'm anything but pleased with the situation the government has put us in, I am pleased to present a budget tonight in which 26 million of this has come from efficiencies and improved use of resources, and only 1 million from savings impacting on services. Mr Mayor, it is a budget that protects and improves our most valued services. No Southwark libraries, leisure centres or children's centres will close. It's a budget that delivers on our council plan commitments, including the Southwark Ethical Care Charter and our free swims and gyms pilot starting in May. And Mr Mayor, at a time when our residents, particularly our poorest residents, are still feeling the pinch of the coalition government's austerity measures, I'm delighted it's also a budget that freezes council tax for the 7th year in succession. I want to thank my cabinet colleagues and the leader who've been my partners throughout the work on this budget, the chief officer team, the leadership network and officers across the council who've embraced the challenge presented to us and risen to it with innovation and determination. And of course, I want to thank the Director of Finance and all from the finance team whose support has been exceptional as always. Mr Mayor, the two opposition amendments both demonstrate financial short-termism and really quite breathtaking hypocrisy. While repeatedly refusing to take any responsibility for their government's failing economic plans, both parties opposite urge financial irresponsibility in Southwark. Whether it's setting unrealistic council tax collection assumptions, slashing the contingency budget, or cutting council tax, all contrary to the advice of Director of Finance, the two parties opposite are happy to risk the financial stability of this authority if it buys them a few retweets this evening. Mr Mayor, financial stability might not seem so exciting, not so easily captured in 140 characters, but it is the foundation upon which every one of our frontline services is built. And Mr Mayor, in a shameful attempt to distract from the unfair cuts of the coalition government, the Leader of the Opposition would like people to believe that we're failing to collect council tax and business rates. Nothing could be further from the truth. Since Labour brought in Reverend Bennett's in-house, our collection, both Indian and historic debts, has been transformed. The National Gold Award for Most Improved Service was hard-earned and well-deserved. We're consistently pushing up Indian collection and chasing down old debts, and only writing off debts when we've exhausted every avenue. And I also want to praise the work of our regeneration and economic development arms of the council. The work they're doing is making the borough a better place to live, work and visit, and delivering an equally vital growth in our tax base. This combination of growth and improved collection is making an immense contribution to reducing the impact of government cuts. In this year alone, we're anticipating more than £7 million of additional resources from these sources. But Mr Mayor, despite this, we still need to find £30 million of savings in the budget. And I again want to praise the work of every cabinet member and every department in coming forward with plans for modernisation, efficiency and income generation. Now I just want to highlight a couple of areas. In tonight's budget, for instance, we're committing to a faster and more ambitious drive to improve services and outcomes for Southwark's most vulnerable residents, shifting the balance of care away from residential placements and into more appropriate settings in the home. We will provide a social care service that is better attuned to the needs and wishes of individuals and their families, will improve outcomes and save money. Other highlights for me include proposals for reshaping the Community Safety Division into a multidisciplinary team working better together to provide a more efficient, effective enforcement service, as well as those, let's to say, photovoltaic arrays on the roof of the waste management facility that we spoke of earlier, delivering income as well as reducing our carbon footprint. And Mr Mayor, I also want to thank Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Not only did we have a really thorough and good session going through the budget, challenging us, asking the right questions, but it also resulted in some really worthwhile recommendations which we are acting upon, including, very importantly, I believe, a review of our voluntary redundancy policy. Mr Mayor, it bears repeating that Southwark has now faced 5 years of deep and unfair funding cuts. Yet again this year we have worked tirelessly to rise to this challenge, to protect and improve services, to keep our fairer future promises, and to freeze council tax for all our residents. But come May the 8th, if another Tory-led government is elected, things are likely to get worse. The 2014 Autumn Statement heralded the possibility of a further £100 million of cuts to Southwark Council, as well as further attacks on the NHS and on the country's poorest. Mr Mayor, we cannot afford to have another 5 years of a government that prioritises the wealthy few over the many. So I commend our budget to you all tonight, and I urge our Labour members to redouble their campaigning efforts. For the sake of this borough, we must elect 3 Labour MPs in Southwark and a Labour government this May.
Thank you. The Leader of the Majority Opposition and Shadow Cabinet Member for Finance to respond. Councillor Anurag Samrai, you have 5 minutes in which to speak.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. The opposition budget is important because it fights for what matters to the residents who elected us. It creates a genuine debate and it pushes the council to be more ambitious. So to begin with, huge thanks to the officers who have put so much work to support all groups with the budget process, and to give a bit of background to our opposition budget. Over the last 5 years, Southwark Labour has stashed £24 million into contingency funds. And in all that time, Mr Mayor, in all that time, they've used 80,000 for the Salter statues. And Southwark's own accounts last year, if you all look at them, the 2013-14 Statement of Accounts, say that usable reserves since 2010 have gone up by 75%, Mr Mayor. And as well as stashing cash, they are also failing to collect all the council tax and business rates owed, despite the service being brought in-house. And actually, and council officers agree with us, that we could recoup the costs of increasing collection rates very quickly, almost immediately, because if you invest in officers to collect more council tax and business rates, then you're generating more income. And Mr Mayor, as well as stashing cash and failing to collect enough cash, they're also failing to cut energy costs. That would not only save money, but it would also help the planet. So, by reducing the amount that goes into contingencies, not putting it all together, but by reducing the amount which goes into contingencies, by collecting more council tax and business rates, and by slashing energy costs, the Liberal Democrats are able to produce a budget which puts £6 million back in the hands of local people. Some of this will be used to reduce the cuts to children and adult care, which would no longer need to be made, and it would reduce the cuts to recycling bags and graffiti tubes. The rest will be used for jobs, for affordable homes, and for health. Now, Labour may say, as we've heard, it's not possible, or it's irresponsible, or it's unrealistic, but our opposition budget has been signed off by the Finance Director as legal and balanced. Labour may not like the idea of cutting cabinet posts, of cutting council spin and catering, but actually, savings have to be made now, and all parties Whoever wins in May has said further cuts will have to be made. And before they start blaming Simon Hughes for all their economic ills, let's just remember for a minute who left the note saying there was no money left. Who borrowed and borrowed and borrowed and let the banks run wild? So we are still in tough economic times, Mr. Mayor. And actually, I agree with much of the Labour budget. The Lib Dems in every budget since 2010 said put money into the noise team in Salisbury, so I welcome that. We've said in every budget, use the new homes bonus, the money the coalition government has given you for new affordable homes, put that in the revenue budget, and we welcome that being done. But there are some things in this budget which make no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense to make it more difficult, more expensive and less convenient for residents to recycle. It makes no sense to spend more on more expensive agency staff. In the last year alone, this council has spent £2 billion more on agency staff, an increase of 14%. Now, in their budget, one department is proposing a saving on agency staff, so why not all departments? And finally, it makes absolutely no sense to make the cuts to adults and children's care while still stashing money. I think it's really important that councillors are aware when they vote for this budget that lines like restructure, remodel, rationalise, harmonise, these are going to have real implications, and we all have a duty to monitor those consequences very closely. I actually think a number of Labour councillors do take the process seriously and understand whoever's in government will make cuts. I think actually often they try and be responsible and creative, and so I hope they'll welcome our suggestions in the same way. Think again about recycle bags, graffiti teams, children and adult care. Collect more council tax and business rates. Don't put so much money into contingencies and cut energy bills. And finally, spend money on what matters: jobs, health and homes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There are 3 amendments to this report. Councillor Neil Coyle to move Amendment B.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 quick points where I start. Firstly, apologies if I'm a little croaky this evening. It's a cold rather than being a bit Natalie Bennett. And secondly, can I also acknowledge the really hard work that's gone into this into the budget and council finance plan from Labour leadership, but also from the officers who are represented here this evening. Brother Fleming referred to this government as being a Thatcherite earlier. Actually, even Thatcher was not so ideologically hostile to local government that she cut budgets in year, which is exactly what the Lib Dem Tory coalition did in 2010-11. But I offer this amendment in 3 parts this evening, Mr. Mayor. The first part covers a neighbourhood fund. Councils opposite say they support localism. Well, here's £630,000 for the neighbourhood fund to help local projects. Please don't spend any of it on sandwiches. We know you don't like sandwiches. Secondly, on discretionary housing payments, I think it's important to note, Mr. Mayor, that Southwark is topping up discretionary housing payments from contingencies. We've only ever had to do that under this coalition government, and we're spending more on discretionary housing payments than the coalition is providing. So this year, the council is spending an additional £400,000, a £200,000 cut from the government, in effect, the £600,000 shortfall. A Labour government in May, which I very much hope Councillor Hayes and I have the privilege to serve in, would scrap the bedroom tax, reducing some of that pressure, but there is still a crisis. The third point is around homelessness, Mr. Mayor. And I notice an important subject to you, given your selection of the Ropes project and Homes for Heroes as your charities this year, and I hope everyone's bought their tickets for the 9th of May. Should be a time for a good party, I hope. It should also be acknowledged that we already provide more support for homeless people than many other boroughs. As an inner London borough with major transport nodes to London Bridge and the Elephant, we face additional pressure that is rising, as noted by the Bishop of Southwark and the Dean at the launch of the Ropes project. As we approach the 7th of May and the close election here, no doubt we'll also hear more from the Lib Dems about how fair this government has been and how this softened Tory policies. On no issue more than homelessness could this be further from the truth. The Department for Communities and Local Government statistics show that here in London, homelessness has risen by 64% since 2010. And that date is no coincidence. It is coalition policies that have driven the rapid increase in homelessness after years of decline under Labour government. Among those Broadway homelessly asked when what the reason was behind that rapid growth was welfare policy.
Among those, public statistics show 31% of homeless JSA claimants have been sanctioned under coalition government regimes, a regime that's had the full support of an out-of-touch Lib Dem MP. He's ending his 3 decades in Parliament as an MP in a government so out of touch, it's already canned charities, restricted access to justice and limited judicial review. Are bishops next, after daring to write to their congregations? The Lib Dem claim to have made this government fairer fails the test of that bishop's letter, fails this council, and fails the people of this borough. Thank you. Councillor Helen Hayes to second amendment B.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In seconding this amendment, I wanted to highlight very briefly why this is such an important amendment within a budget which is overall as challenging a budget to set as the council has known in recent living memory. And I'd like to commend council colleague and her cabinet colleagues as well as the officers on a budget which is doing the best job that we can of protecting our residents against the cuts which we have to bear. Mr. Mayor, the approach of this government is, on the whole, one which punishes the poorest and makes life tougher for people in many different ways. But chief amongst its cruelties is the policy of the bedroom tax. I've seen first-hand in College Ward the extent to which this policy drives people to despair, and I wanted to share this evening in moving this amendment 2 quick examples. A few weeks ago, I found myself on the phone late at night to a woman who had attempted suicide 3 times because the thought of losing her home of more than 30 years was simply too much to bear. It was the most distressing phone call I had ever had in my years as a councillor in this borough. And on the doorstep recently, I met a woman who told me that she had worked all her life until a heart condition had forced her to stop. And she broke down as she told me how stigmatised she felt to be affected by the bedroom tax and to be forced to move home. Mr. Mayor, it is not the role of the welfare system to stigmatise or to drive people to the depth of despair. The bedroom tax is cruel and iniquitous, and it needs to go, which is what will happen as soon as a Labour government is elected in May. But until that time, it seems to me that it is a very good use of our contingencies to give our residents comfort on this issue and to ease the hardship which it brings. The Neighbourhood Fund is also a good response to a very constrained and challenging budget, allowing residents and ward members to play a very direct role in delivering local priorities and in topping up some of the things which the council is not anymore able to fund through the general fund. Testament to this is the fact that this fund is more oversubscribed this year than it has ever been, and it is absolutely right that the funding for it should be increased. As I indicated earlier in my supplemental question, the urgent issue for this council is that of achieving a fairer funding supplement to enable the council to deliver for our diverse communities. Until that time, we must make the best use of our resources to help those who need it most, and therefore I commend this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Michael Mitchell to move amendment C.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And I'm delighted to be moving this Conservative amendment to the budget tonight, and may I place on record my thanks to the officers who assisted in its preparation. It would be remiss of me if I didn't first thank and congratulate the leader on his spectacular U-turn over the funding for our school cross improvements. The Lollipops for Life campaign has been a long one. We were all disappointed when the leader rejected my olive branch at the first question time after last May's election, but we certainly welcome his climb down now. I'm also happy to record the Council is making progress on another Conservative manifesto pledge. The Council is at long last recognising that council taxpayers should not be funding council staff not to work on providing services to the community. Reducing the amount spent on supporting trade union activities is welcome, and our amendment simply encourages Labour to go further. The Council continues to resist calls for the closure of Southwark Life, but the sooner it faces up to reality, the quicker we can save another £100,000 a year without affecting frontline services. We all welcome the continuing significant falls in crime across the borough and pay tribute to our police officers who are helping deliver this. At the same time, we recognise that changes in operational policing have not helped reduce the fear of crime. I know the council has taken up the LOPAC offer to buy a bobby and get one free for the noise team. Our amendment helps boost by 6 the number of officers in the south of the borough. The centralising tendency of this administration is a continuing concern. We believe returning planning powers to community councils will lead to better informed decision making, more in keeping with the interests of the local community. And the council tax is often the largest single bill faced by a family every year. If Labour is really serious about wanting to help people with the cost of living, it should do all it can to reduce the bill. The Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, recognises this and has reduced his charge for the 3rd year running. Southwark should be looking to do the same. Instead, they take money they don't need and put it in a contingency they don't spend. Reducing the council tax, where prudent and affordable, would be a big help to those on low or average earnings. Our judgment this year is a reduction of 2%. I commend this amendment to the council.
Councillors Jane Lawrence to second amendment C.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second the Conservative amendments and focus on 2 particular strands of amendments that we have proposed. The first is to encourage, again back in the field of public health, the council to initiate a pedestrian strategy. We need to give greater priority to both young and old in our community, for whom walking across the borough is a key part of their daily life. Why do we not do this? We are all pedestrians, all 300,000 of us, and some of us are only pedestrians, especially the old, young and more vulnerable amongst us. With particular reference to the elderly, we are pledged to become a more age-friendly borough, and we have nearly 25,000 people in the borough who are over 65. The percentage, of course, is higher in the south of the borough where people are somewhat older. Why should we walk? Well, back to public health again, it's good for you, and all evidence shows that a brisk 20-minute walk each day is in fact enough to reduce an individual risk of early death. And if I could just highlight this particular aspect of walking, it's free. In short, we have to make walking safe, enjoyable and accessible, and with a secure place and name within the public realm hierarchy. So I'd welcome very much some investment as a first step to Southwark committing to developing a pedestrian strategy for all. My second focus is on the public consultation process currently employed by Southwark. We would like to initiate a review of this, as there has been considerable evidence of late in the south of the borough that recent consultations have not gone well, and they've been led to some antipathy towards the council, and we would like to invest some money in ensuring that this practice is not repeated. Currently there is, as I said, clear public evidence of community dissatisfaction. This dissatisfaction is escalating, and the risks here are both reputational to Southwark and increased operational costs, as the questions are repeated and more calls for information are given. What we're missing here is the opportunity for positive local authority and community planning and better informed initiatives and implementation. So to summarise, I would aim to improve our relationships with the local communities and urge the council to review and update its public consultation process. Thank you.
Councillor Edwin Morris to move amendment D.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Planning is a function that the council has to perform. Whilst it might not be regarded as a frontline service, we have a duty to ensure that we are developing a sustainable borough in our housing, hospitals, schools and parks. And these decisions are entirely in the hands of the planners and the planning committee. If we do not get this right, our borough and our communities will suffer. Housing is one of the most basic human needs, and we must ensure that we are providing housing for all, not just council housing, but a range of housing to meet our community's needs. But let's take affordable housing. The council talks the talk on affordable housing, but unfortunately its record does not match its rhetoric.
Although the council has a 35% affordable housing policy, Labour are content with receiving less than this from developers. Labour has consistently failed to meet the council's own policy of delivering 1 in 3 affordable homes on site on new developments on the grounds of viability. We cannot have a system where developers dictate the terms and conditions of how our new communities will look and feel. Instead of siding with private developers, Labour Council should be standing up for local people who desperately need access to affordable homes and enforcing their own policy. There is a perception among residents that the council is at the beck and call of developers. The council needs to do more to convince residents that it is on their side and wants to build genuinely mixed communities across the borough. Labour makes the excuse that if they take money from developers in the north of the borough, they can get better value for money building council homes in other areas. But these will invariably be in the middle of the borough and will be prioritised for residents already living in the middle of the borough. People living in the north and far south of the borough have just as much right to an affordable home as anybody else. But instead, they are more likely to be priced out of their area as the overall house prices are pushed up with every new luxury development. The Liberal Democrat amendment seeks to ensure the council can stand strongly on its own affordable housing policy by investing more money in the council's planning department. Staff are overworked and under pressure, and we need to make sure that they are able to take the time needed to fully explore all the issues. It was revealed at the Haygate Tribunal that planning officers do not understand viability and they use experts to check the calculations. And sometimes the experts don't agree with the developers and the officers are left trying to make last-minute changes to the affordable housing agreements. We should not be in this position where our staff are so overworked that they risk making mistakes. It's time for the council to take back control of affordable housing from the developers and ensure that we fight for more truly affordable housing in Southwark. Thank you.
Councillor David Hubbard, the second amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure we've all been knocking on lots of doors recently, and I think to a greater extent than I can recall, we've come across properties which are empty, which have obviously been empty for a long time. And this is a continuing and growing problem. I don't know what's so funny about empty properties, I really don't.
Point, please. Let the member be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was so gratifying that, in fact, in January, the entire council supported the Lib Dem motion on empty homes. And I'm looking forward to seeing some action on that. There are various ways in which we can tackle the empty homes problem. Some are quite draconian, the big stick method, if you like. For example, in December last year, Islington Council, Labour Council, announced plans to fine or take legal action against investors who leave properties empty, just to make profits. These people are becoming known as buy to leave rather than buy to let. They are all only interested, obviously, in investing property to make money when the property prices rise. That doesn't help anybody in living in this borough who's looking for accommodation. But there are other ways of tackling homelessness as well. We have decided that we're going to charge 150% of council tax to empty homes. But according to council records, there are 3,622 empty homes, of which only 462 are being charged 150%, which seems to be a rather small proportion. But perhaps slightly more carrot than stick, there's another method which I don't think we've ever even considered, but which I think would allow to be introduced, and that's the use of what are called EDMOs, or empty dwelling residential properties management order. This system, which was introduced in the Housing Act 2004, came into force in 2006. It gives the local authority powers to approach the owners of empty properties and to try to work with them by making an interim EDMO which lasts for 12 months. And during that time, the authority works with the owner of the property to try and agree a way to put the property back into use. We all know that a lot of empty properties are empty because people cannot or will not improve them and maintain them. And this is a way in which we can help property If no agreement is reached within 12 months, then there can be a further order made, which lasts up to 7 years. And the difference there is that the authority is required to obtain the owner's permission that can actually take over that property, let it to council tenants until such time as the owner requires it back. And they
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. I have a list of members who have indicated they wish to speak. Councillor Bill Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to start by saying how proud I am to be a member of the Labour administration that has steered its council through the most savage cuts since the 1930s. Cuts for the NHS, vicious cuts to the welfare system, resulting in hardship for working families on the lowest of incomes. And let's not forget the introduction of the most pernicious, cruelest tax of all, the bedroom tax. Supported and voted for, not once, not twice, not even 3 times, 8 times by Simon Hughes. Or as the shame indeed, or as the mealy-mouthed opposition would term him, Simon of Nazareth. Now we have before us that same mealy-mouthed group of people who spend all of their time at Council Assembly defending his record as a government minister. Because, it has to be said, they have no record of their own to defend. By presenting an amendment that in one breath accuses the last Labour government of being profligate with the nation's finances, single-handedly causing the recent financial crisis and leaving the country with no money. Or to put it another way, spending the reserves. But according to them, that's mere detail. Detail! Here we have a desolated bunch of non-entities now desperate for headlines because they do not have the wherewithal to put together a credible alternative. And they are demanding this Labour administration spend our reserves. In short, colleagues, they are advocating profligacy. We do not like the profligate Liberals who lust for power having ditched theirs. They want jam today, forget about tomorrow, because tomorrow doesn't concern them. So decimated they are, the next 8 years won't concern them. They are no match for us, as the 2014 election proved. No match for our pledges, paying the London living wage, building 11,000 new council homes, continuing the rollout of Walk Drive Safe, bringing council services in-house, revitalise neighbourhoods, freezing council tax for the 7th consecutive year. How will we achieve this, and how will we continue to achieve? Not by using the liberal fiscal policy that was written by Mood on the back of a sandwich wrapper. No, we have achieved these things, and we will achieve more by being prudent with our finances, making efficiency savings where necessary and appropriate. Why? Because we believe in our principles of social justice and fairness for all, and because we are both prudent and sensible. All this in spite of the savage cuts voted for and supported by Simon Hughes, despite his lust for power.
Thank you very much.
Twilight of
the time is up. Thank you. Councillor Brownfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These difficult times. Southwark the third worst hit borough. I'm proud that we're protecting frontline services and protecting our fairer future pledges. And I thank Councillor Colley and all who have worked to protect our most vulnerable residents in difficult circumstances. Amendment C and D are irresponsible, Mr. Mayor. We've just heard from the Leader of the Opposition with her magic savings to make the Green Party leader who entertained us all this week on LBT look like an economics professor. I haven't heard a word from the Lib Dems tonight about why we have to make these cuts. They're always telling us about St Simon and all his works, but the only person in Southwark who voted for these cuts is Simon Hughes. The only person in Southwark who thinks these cuts are fair is Simon Hughes, and the only person who could have prevented these cuts is Government Minister Simon Hughes. So I'd like to appeal to our colleagues in the opposition parties. If Forget your populist and irresponsible amendments and join us. Help repair a bit of the damage that your party has done to Southwark. And when next week you get asked to deliver Simon's leaflets criticising the Labour budget, remember that yet again, he's left you off his most recent offering. Because he's ashamed. This is the latest edition of the Simon News. No Lib Dem logo on there. Shame indeed. Normally it comes out on a Thursday, but this must be a special edition. And remember that he's the reason that difficult decisions have had to be made. His cuts and his government, and when you support him, they're your cuts and your government. Support the amendment from Neil Kyle and from Helen Hayes to support the budget. Thank you.
Councillor Lisa Raza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak about the transport proposals in our amendment. They're not contentious, but I do believe they are important. I've lost count of the number of times that I've spoken about traffic and transport issues in Rotherhithe at council meetings. Don't worry, when I say Rotherhithe, I'm referring to the geographical area of the ward, because I know that both wards in that area share these issues, and I'm a bit more bigger picture. We desperately need more routes on and off the peninsula, and the river is the obvious way to look. We need a new pier, and we need the Brunel Bridge. The Brunel Bridge idea had great support from stakeholders several years back. I remember meeting with Sustrans, with the Canary Wharf Group, and with Simon Hughes in 2007 at the Rotherhithe Hilton, and even discussing the sites on each side of the river where the bridge would land. Got shelved by the Mayor in favour of the cable car linking the Excel Centre and the A2, which was hugely disappointing, but of course understandable because of the Olympics. But now we can prioritise residents over tourists, and we can transform transport links from arguably one of the most geographically isolated parts of central London. The people are waiting for Candlehurst is 6, but for Salter Road it's 2. Council needs to push hard on these big infrastructure projects. There is already momentum and commitment from all sides of this council for the Bakerloo line extension, but we will have to keep the pressure on to get that. The same should go for the bridge and the pier, which now have support from government. These projects would allow the many people who live in Rotherhithe and work in Canary Wharf to walk to work. They will create cycling links that didn't exist before. They would create thousands of vital local jobs, and they would ease pressure on local traffic and the Jubilee line, which is already at capacity at peak times. It would also positively impact air quality, which is among the worst in London along Lower Road and Jamaica Road. There will be millions of pounds of income for this council from redevelopment going on the Rotherhithe Peninsula. And if you're happy to take the profits, you must lead on improving the infrastructure. Our amendment funds a working party to drive these projects forward and to demonstrate the council's commitment to making them happen. We recognise the importance of this because it will be transformational, and it deserves to be in this council's budget and, in fact, in the forward plan. And if I'd been called earlier to speak on the forward plan, I would have said that. I think it's quite shocking that both that and, incidentally, teenage pregnancy are both missing from that plan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Paul Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak about our budget with a sense of pride in it as a Faraday member. It would be very easy for this council to follow Hatchet Hughes' lead and run, rather like Councillor Samurai, and blame somebody else, for the mess that we're in. It would be laudable for the council to plug the gaps in the coalition's plans and offer a stab jacket to residents against Hatchet Hughes' swinging cuts and ever deeper knife. But we have gone one better. We have protected the most vulnerable in the borough as best we can, but offer the hopeful one nation, one borough budget, which offers a bright future, a fair future for all. Our budget recognises the council's social responsibility to tackle social injustice at its source, not just clearing up the coalition's mess. The Ethical Care Charter does just that, and I will feel such a sense of pride talking to residents in Faraday Ward who are so often working in the care sector about the improvements in their terms, conditions and income that we will be providing them. Not only will I speak to them with pride, but to their parents and to their vulnerable neighbours when I can say that the people looking after you will be assured of the dignity at work that they deserve and thus the dignity of care that our residents are entitled to. That's why we have continued to fund our bold pledge for free healthy school meals for every primary school child, not just a portion of a primary school as backed by the coalition parties opposite. That's children of all classes and backgrounds sitting down, Councillor Mitchell, to eat together, dine together without the stigma of free school meals. And indeed now expensive swimming and gym use will be available not only to the Gloria to Donai like Councillor Mitchell himself, but also to those who cannot afford it alongside their wealthier neighbours. But what excites me most is our pledge in black and white for new kitchen and bathrooms for Faraday residents living who are council tenants. And for residents on the Elizabeth estate, for residents in Everett and Richmond House, this means so much because they watch their neighbours in Simon Hughes' constituency consistently funded, while houses in Camberwell, Peckham were left to rot. This is a promise which is there clearly for everybody in our budget, wherever they are. And that self-seeking level continues to this day, for it is not without amusement that I note within their own amendments provision for extra funding for retirement, so they claim, for over 60s. Well, is there one 63-year-old they have in mind in particular when they talk about this retirement opportunities? Well, I can assure you that I regret to say that the publicly funded Simon Hughes Green Fan Club that they propose, instead of funding the apparent propaganda of a useful council magazine, will do little to serve his isolation in his forthcoming retirement. I urge councillors to vote in favour of the budget and against the amendments.
Councillor Eleanor Carson.
Thank you, Steph. I didn't put my hand up.
So Jasmine Ali.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to talk about getting children and families right, really, because from the comments I've heard and what I've read, the opposition, none of them, understand the budget for children and families, because the opposition do not understand children and families, full stop. The budget for our people's services, including children and families, is transformational. Well, at least let me finish. I mean, it's not about cutting services, it's about reconfiguring services so that we can maintain quality. And it's about, you'll be surprised to hear, putting children first. We are not the only ones to use this approach in our budget. Nottinghamshire Council plans to save 2.3 million by reducing reliance on expensive residential placements. Derbyshire, East Riding, between them will save over £1 million doing the same thing. And I could cite more examples. We see this as an opportunity, as the budget will give us an opportunity to fundamentally increase the quality of services we deliver to our children in care, putting children first. We will focus on a preventative approach so that we can make sure troubled families and children in need are identified early and we can target the right support for individual children. Now, why is this related to the budget and the things that we're doing in it? Because there are a number of reports, but one in particular, people may remember, carried out by Dennis, in a study that they called In Loco Parentis, actually looked at children in care, and they mapped the journey of children in care that had what they called a stable journey, and children in care that had an unstable journey. And those who had a stable journey in care cost 23k annually. And the the children in care that had an unstable journey cost 56k. So, I think it's important to recognise why we are not crudely making cuts on an important children and families part of the budget. I won't be the only one to point out that the opposition, they're talking about fairness, but actually, while in government, they want the poorest people, including the children and families on our estate, to foot the bill for their austerity drive. as someone who has spent most of their working life with children and families, I think we are in a good position. We are working, in a difficult position, but I think that we have a good team, a good children's workforce, and we have a scrutiny team that is full of experts in children's services, and we can work together. And what I would ask the opposition to do is to have an honest debate. Be active in your scrutiny committees. And, give us some real challenge and stop trying to put up the headlines and giving red herrings when something is important.
Thank you.
Children and families. Thank you.
Also, Richard Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like just to comment on something that the Councillor Morris said earlier about new homes being built. We are building new homes across the borough. We are a few weeks away from the very first homes, new council homes, being let out at Willow Wall. I'm delighted to be able to say that earlier this week I was able to discuss and agree with officers the terms of which will make sure that half of those homes go to people in housing need on the sexual estate. So I think some very good news there. I did want to talk perhaps a bit more about perhaps two areas which aren't very sexy to talk about, which the Liberal Democrats have picked up in their budget they want us to cut money on: contingency and consultants. Now, first of all, Councillor Williams made a good point about what happened with decisions the DWP has made and the financial pressures that's created on the council. We've had bedroom tax, which has created a pressure for us that was beyond the money they gave us to deal with in terms of our discretionary housing payments. That's why this year we've had to put 200,000 that wasn't budgeted for extra into dealing with that. The general fund, another 200,000 on the housing revenue account. We've also seen, because of changes they've made in terms of increased benefit sanctions, a massive increase in the number of families who are having to help who have no recourse to public funds, against a budget of about just 3.2 million. We're actually spending 4.1 million this year, 900,000 extra. That's a real financial pressure that isn't there in the budget that we have for the current year. We've had to find money to cover. Even more severe, given the benefit changes there have been, is the number of homeless we have. Councillor Coyle talked about a 64% increase since 2010. Actually, it's worse than that. It's a 64% increase on last year. Last year, we had to deal with 927 homeless applications. This year, 1,521. And what is that doing to our budget? Well, we have a budget of 2.6 million, which we are currently spending 2.1 million more than. So if you add those amounts together, that comes to £3.2 million. That shows why we need a contingency to deal with some of these pressures. They are real, and as cuts carry on, they're going to be harder to deal with those in budget. But just very quickly on consultants, why do we need them? Because we're doing innovative things. We cut by 80% of the money that the Liberal Democrats spend on consultants. But if you're building new libraries, new homes, new leisure centres, you need the experts in there to do one-off jobs. You need to get those in. We also sometimes need the independent advice that we can get from people who don't trust the council, such as independent tenant trainings to get support as well. Such as brilliant work that Neil Curtis has done at Draper House at Four Squares and elsewhere, and that's been worth its weight in gold. I just finally want to point out that it is utterly hypocrisy for a leader of the opposition to say we should not be spending money on independent tenant trainings and consultants when she goes in on the 8th of October and 5th of
Councillor, please sit down. Councillor Rosie Schindler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to focus my remarks this evening on the particular aspect of our amendment related to apprenticeships. Something I'm really proud that the Liberal Democrats have championed and delivered on in government has been the really rapid increase in the number of high-quality apprenticeships. In only 5 years, we've already doubled the number of apprenticeships created in comparison to the last Labour government, who had 13 years. That's 2 million since May 2010. Just as importantly, we've made really meaningful improvements in the quality of these apprenticeships. by setting minimum pay requirements and training standards to ensure that people that take up these opportunities really get the most from them. In Southwark, as across England, we've really benefited from the government's new approach. I hope everyone in this chamber can wholeheartedly welcome the fact that we have 6,000 more apprenticeships in Southwark now than we did in May 2010. To put that figure in perspective, there were 680 new apprenticeships started in 2009 to 10, and that led to 1,590 in a single year in 2010 to 11. A real testament to the commitment of Liberal Democrat ministers on this issue. The leader of the council is often keen to characterise Southwark as having lost out disproportionately from government policies, but interestingly, he doesn't seem to want to highlight this incredibly positive story that Southwark has, of all inner London boroughs, the fourth highest number of apprenticeship starts in each year since 2010, and the third highest number of people currently participating in apprenticeships. In 2013 to 14, the figures were 150% higher than they were in 2009 to 10. So the government made a fantastic start in preparing people to take on the record number of new jobs that the government has created. But I'd like to see the council doing their part too. We know local employers and regeneration schemes want to take on local people, but we must play a part in ensuring people can access these opportunities, whether by helping them gain the valuable skills that they need or promoting the opportunities that are available. That's why the Liberal Democrats have proposed recruiting dedicated council officers who can help local employers create apprenticeships and provide quality work experience in local schools. That is why we also want to fund training and outreach to ensure people know what apprenticeship opportunities are available to them. We want the council to take real, practical steps to help local people benefit from these incredibly valuable opportunities, and I hope everyone can support this proposal this evening.
Councillor Rebecca Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before us tonight is a Labour budget which will allow us to deliver on the innovative policies that this Labour administration was re-elected on, deliver on our fairer future promises and deliver for our residents. Residents in East Walworth are already seeing the benefits, and it's the impact of our Labour policies that I want to talk about this evening. As Chair of the Health of Communities Scrutiny Subcommittee, I'm keen to ensure that we improve the health of our borough, and the opening of the Castle Leisure Centre will provide my residents with a brand new facility on their doorstep. However, my residents will not only have access to a new leisure centre. Thanks to this Labour administration, they will also have free swimming and gym use, a policy which captured the hearts and minds of voters on the doorstep and which we are seeing come into reality. A truly innovative policy that will provide residents with a way to keep active, improve their health and have access to the excellent facilities that this council is investing in. This Labour administration has also committed to building 11,000 new council homes, a flagship announcement and one that will help us to provide new homes for those on our ever-increasing housing waiting lists. But at the same time, we must not forget our existing residents. I think in particular of residents like Michelle at Payless House, who continues to campaign for her community and hold me, Councillor Merrill and Councillor Seaton to account to ensure that we're delivering to the highest standards. And that's why I am proud that this administration is completing our Warm, Dry, Safe programme on estates including Payless House, the Kinglake Estate and Chatham Street, and beginning a programme to deliver new kitchens and bathrooms for those same properties. True investment in our council stock, which was so severely lacking under the Lib Dem administration. Our green spaces are important to our community, and I'm delighted that East Walworth will see Central London's largest new park in over 70 years. But we can celebrate more than the creation of a new park, as our existing parks and green spaces gain plaudits. In East Walworth in 2014, we saw green flags awarded to Surrey Square and Nursery Road Park, two parks where local residents have invested and continue to invest countless hours into making these spaces attractive, accessible and interesting for the community. And I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the Friends of Surrey Square Park and the Friends of Nursery Road Park on their work to date and offer my continued support to maintain these parks in the future. But we cannot forget Burgess Park, where the investment of this Labour administration has seen usage increase by 500,000 visitors a year, and I'm delighted that we're committing a further £6 million for improvements. But regenerating our local community doesn't stop there. It cannot escape anybody here tonight that the regeneration at Elephant and Castle is underway, providing new homes and facilities for our residents. New residents will be moving into Trafalgar Place in April this year, and the next phase of the development will be going on sale in a couple of days. But we're also going to be seeing the Guinness Trust development coming online, a development where we're providing 140 homes with 84 at social rents. That's 60%, well above the 35% policy.
Thank you. Councillor Victoria Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Labour colleagues, especially my husband, will know that I've got a great love of spending money and believing this is the best way to fix any problems we face. I'm a great advocate for big government, and I've never really understood why people might refer to the nanny state in derogatory terms. The idea of the state as a helpful and incredibly resourceful lady arriving at my door at 7 AM to make sure my children are happy, healthy, well educated strikes me as a rather good one. Anyway, the point of this to say here I am wanting to tell you why the Lib Dem amendment around our looked after children is the wrong one. It completely fails to recognise the step change we've made in our practice of social care under this Labour Council, and it displays a heartbreaking poverty of ambition for our most vulnerable children. Here's the thing, we've done our best to protect the children's budget from the worst of the cuts in recent years. We've allowed ourselves time to put in place the services which are now beginning to save us money. So the total number of looked after children here in Southwark is declining. Over the last 12 months alone, we've gone from 550 children in care to 497. That's the lowest number for 10 years. And what we have in place, we think, will continue that downward trajectory. Less children in care, less money. As Councillor Ali has said, more stable placements, less money. A number of interventions and services have been developed aimed at reducing the risk of family breakdowns. We've developed social workers skilled in systemic and behavioural family interventions. We're working with families earlier and earlier. Our new specialist extra care package will allow us to do more to support children and young people to remain with their families, with a particular focus on teenagers at risk of family breakdown who are in care or who are in care but are leaving placements to return home. From practitioners across a range of disciplines being co-located so there's swift access to the right services, to our special family focus team, to our ever-improving early help offer, to functional family therapy offering help in the family home, to our bold new commitment this evening to recruit more and better local foster carers, to our forthcoming review of supported housing for young people. We are absolutely serious about changing and improving the way we support our most vulnerable children and young people and getting them the best outcomes. We're also proud that our adoption record is showing that where that is the best option, our children are being moved quicker, earlier and in greater numbers for permanent new placements. Paying £9,000 a week so that a young person in a crisis situation ends up in a residential placement, possibly surrounded by many people, but not the ones who can genuinely make a difference to that person's life, is not a good thing to do. Continuing to place a child with an agency foster carer with higher costs when we think we can offer better support for our foster carers and better outcomes for our children.
Thank you. Your time is up, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Southwark Liberal Democrats' transport proposals include funding of a working party to capitalise on impending infrastructure projects for the benefits of Southwark residents. The working party is important because it shows government just how serious Southwark is to get these projects to come to fruition. These projects include the Bakerloo line extension, construction of the new Rotherhithe Pier, and the building of the Brunel Bridge to link Southwark pedestrians and cyclists to Canary Wharf. And we also think these initiatives should be included in the council plan. All three projects will provide massive benefits in a number of ways. Apprenticeships for Southwark residents must be secured and must be fundamental to the construction of these projects that local people have the opportunity to maximise career chances. While it is pleasing to see a large increase in apprenticeships, as my colleague has pointed out, up to almost double across London since 2009 and 10, we must keep this momentum going. Improvements in air quality must also be a key target. All three projects provide an opportunity to increase environmentally friendly transport options and reductions in bus and car journeys. The Bakerloo line extension chimes with Southwark's plan for an area action plan along the Old Kent Road. And I was really pleased the other evening to see how well attended the initial consultation was.
On the 20th of February this year, George Osborne and Boris Johnson launched the long-term economic plan for London. And as part of the plan, the government is asking TfL to draw up proposals for Bakerloo Line extension so that funding decisions can be made post-general election. There were more than 14,000 responses to TfL's consultation on the extension, with 96% of respondents supporting or strongly supporting the scheme. I have no idea what the other 4% said. While the Hyde Pier would give residents the option of using the river to commute to and from work, how great it would be for people to not have to rely on the C10, well, turning up for starters, and then making its journey down Jamaica Road. The Brunel Bridge would also be an enormous fillip for the north of the borough. It would make the journey for Canary Wharf working so quick and easy. It would encourage people to cycle to work, which reminds me that Canary Wharf is served by the London Cycle Hire Scheme. Bringing the scheme to the breadth of Southwark must be a key objective for this council, and we call on Southwark Council leadership to continue to press TfL for an expansion of the scheme so that it can play its part in improving cycling rates within the borough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're seeing unprecedented cuts in our funding. In the past 5 years, we've seen over 30% of the council budget cut by the coalition government. Now, if everyone in this room had experienced the same level of cuts to their own personal income, they would most certainly be facing financial hardship and exclusion. We are being financially excluded by a government of the wealthy for the wealthy. This government is cutting funding for local welfare support schemes that provide help and support to some of our most vulnerable residents. Funding that supported our Southwark Emergency Support Scheme, which is a lifeline to many people struggling financially in Southwark. We believe strongly there should be support in place, and despite the withdrawal of funding, we will ensure that funding for set is in place until at least 2018, and this is just one example of Labour values working for our residents. Despite the cuts, Councillor Collins delivered a budget where we are keeping our very fixed promises, freezing council tax and protecting frontline services, as Councillor Livingston has done in the previous 4 years. A budget where Labour values are making and will continue to make a positive difference to people in the borough. Contrast that to the amendment that Lib Dems are proposing. Amendment that fairly is a basis of credibility. Amended budget that doesn't stand up to financial scrutiny. It's just a wish list that doesn't actually appear to have been costed. Take, for example, the proposed 50,000 revenue on levies from late night bars and pubs. How is this figure reached? Do you know how many pubs and bars will be charged for levy? And how much would that levy be? What big additional costs of administrating this scheme? These are fundamentals that need to be factored in before arriving at a revenue figure. A grand sum of £50,000 seems to be plucked from the air in a thinly veiled attempt to make all of the columns add up. And the same can be said of the commitment to fight for jobs and apprenticeships. There are no outcomes of how many jobs and apprenticeships you want to create. And it's all very wishy-washy, but then what to expect from a party that doesn't really know what it stands for? Yeah. And 2,000 apprenticeships. We're already on our way to meeting this commitment and have recently launched a Southwark Employment and Enterprise Development Scheme, helping local businesses to grow and employing young people from the borough. But again, I expect that to be passed by Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Schimmel. It is not Simon and Nazareth who's delivering on apprenticeships. It is our Labour administration in Southwark that will deliver apprenticeships for our young people. He cannot take the credit for that. And I won't even bother to expand on their proposal of sponsored sandwiches. I mean, it's an idea that's too spicy. Of the loaf, basically. There's also the obligatory paragraph about Simon Hughes, the only MP in Southwark who thinks that the cuts are fair. It shows more than ever he's put his own self-interest before those of his constituents. It shows scant regard he holds all of us in. Now more than ever, we need free Labour MPs in Southwark to fight for us and stand up for the best interests. And that's why it's important to re-elect Harriet Harman, to re-elect Councillor Helen Hayes and Councillor Neil Corral on the 7th of May. The Lib Dems have shown they cannot be trusted in government, and Simon Hughes has shown he cannot be trusted in Southwark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to join colleagues as well in thanking Councillor Colley and senior officers and officers for their work on this. As Chair of Community Council, Peckham and Nantec Community Council, I've had the pleasure of playing an active role in this year's Neighbourhood Fund. And I was pleased, as Councillor Hayes has noted as well, how successful it was and how many people applied.
a trend replicated across the borough. That's why I would like to take the opportunity to welcome Amendment B, an increase to a total of 630,000 per ward. The reason why I would like to support this is I think of the new community groups that will be able to put in an extra application for community gardens. I think of a community sports team who will now be able to apply for more funding to provide more activities for young people in my ward. And finally, and crucially, Mr. Mayor, the Neighbourhood Fund often provides a gateway to council services. And what better statement to say to residents and communities than we're on your side? Mr. Mayor, we've had to make tough decisions, as Councillor Collier said. But I'm proud to be part of the Labour administration, which, when we had to make those decisions, had been on the side of local communities. And that's why I'll be supporting the budget and Amendment B, and I hope all members from across all parties will be doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Most of what I was going to say in the speech has actually been spoken about tonight. I just want to really reiterate what our budgets and what our plans over the past 4 years has meant to my ward. One of the first things we did when we came into power was stop the delay and delays that administration did before and actually got on with the regeneration. And we're talking about what jobs that brought in. I found out this week that brought in 322 local jobs across this borough. 147 of those were from people that were previously unemployed. If we carried on with your delay, they wouldn't have had a job. Next thing, you talk about social housing. Whilst you were in power, there was no dedicated social housing department. No clear leadership, no financial direction, nothing. I'm going to just go on what that actually means on the ground. We sorted that out. We started our water dry and safe. We're now building 11, or going to build 11,000 homes, council homes. And I can just say that, council homes. Just in case you got a bit confused, you seem to be confused quite a lot on that one. Right, let's put this on what that actually means on the ground. Right, in 2010, before we come into power, I don't know if you remember, it was a very bitterly cold winter. I remember, Martin, we were walking across Birch Park, we couldn't see in front of you. That winter, the Kinglake Estate heating went down. Your housing, well, wasn't a housing department, but your method of solving this might as well be sticky back plaster, big hammer on it, and hope for the best. As soon as we come into power, we've changed their boiler. They've now got warm heat. If you go around the Kinglake now, and it's a dead campaign on the Kinglake. If you go around there now, you will see the warm, dry and safe programme actually in action. And after some campaigning from local residents, you will see they're having their security doors fitted. That is what this administration does. We have the vision, the passion, and we make decisions, unlike what we do in your administration. So I'm hoping in May, and I'm going to say it, that local residents kick Simon, give him his pension card, tell him to go away, put Neil in place so we can get on with looking after the people of Boss. Simon, Neil has the heart and passion to do it and will put Boss first, not his career.
Councillor James Hopkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm proud to add my support to our budget proposals, which will ensure that our young people get the best start of life and that families that need support continue to receive the support that they need in these harsh economic times. As we all know, the Council has a duty to ensure that the needs of the most vulnerable people in its care are well catered for and met. This is far more important now considering the harsh economic climate we all live in. Unfortunately, some of these vulnerable members of our society have very little available to them
in terms of communicating their wishes and feelings, even to people who care for and work with them, let alone politicians like us who regularly make decisions that affect every single aspect of their lives. One of these groups, as we know, is Children in Care, so I was very surprised about the proposed council cuts to the children's social care budget by 10%. Between 2013 and 2014, there were 119 incidents of young people going missing from care in Southwark, related to 38 separate individuals. Although this represents a fall from the previous year, it is substantially higher than recent years. For example, between 2010 and 2011, there were just 17 incidents of children going missing from care. The Liberal Democrat Assembly member, Caroline Pigeon, has been a leading voice in raising this issue through her report, Look After Children Missing from Care, which looks at the problem across London. Evidence clearly shows an ongoing problem that deserves our urgent attention. The Labour Council says it wants to reduce the number of placements by discouraging the use of expensive placements and ensuring that children are placed with their natural families or foster parents. While I agree with this principle, I still believe that there should continue to be a focus on maintaining good quality placement settings, especially if it has been determined that there are no other viable alternatives for these children to be placed in. Although the research evidence is very clear that poor quality residential placements directly contributes to children going missing from care. The evidence also shows that children are being separated from siblings because of placement moves and general instability. For these reasons, we aim to reverse Labour's drastic cuts to the services that affect children in care. In these economic times, families also deserve any support that we can provide. The cost of childcare has been spiraling out of control in recent years. Over a 39-week school year, Southwark parents may be forced to fork out over £15,000 per child for childcare, which is more than the cost of sending a child to private school and more than many households spend on mortgage payments. Part of what the Lib Dems have achieved in government in terms of supporting families with childcare.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Councillor Evelyn Coulter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Times of budget announcement are always met with a sense of trepidation for residents. But I must commend the Labour group of councillors in Southwark, led by Councillor Fiona Colley, who have worked tirelessly to ensure that the budget works for everyone, indeed ensuring a fairer future for all. Mr. Mayor, at the start of the austerity measures, we heard things like, we are all in it together, that we all must tighten our belts. Quite frankly, I think that belt has been decided to choke some of us, while others are sitting very, very comfortably. How is it that cuts and spending powers are systematically greater in more deprived local authorities? How is it that the more disadvantaged groups in our society have been made to face the brunt of cuts, while bankers, let's face it, are still enjoying bumper bonuses, and the rich have been allowed to hide money instead of paying the taxes that is well needed? It is clear that we are not all in this together. Since 2010, Southwark has faced a cost of £100 million